Hello, everybody. Dave Bleckman here, owner of Positive Negatives in the Annapolis Photography Workshop Group. And I want to welcome you to this week's edition of Free Weekly Wisdom. Now, unlike my previous videos of Free Weekend Wisdom, this video will not expire come Sunday night. These videos will stay up indefinitely. So that's why instead of Free Weekend Wisdom, they're now called Free Weekly Wisdom. And if you watched my Free Weekly Wisdom video last week, I showed you how I import my images from my memory card onto my computer. Basically what I do is I attach my memory card to my laptop. I import my images through the Lightroom Classic module onto an external hard drive. So if you missed that video last week, go back and watch that. What I want to show you this week is basically how to get started editing some of these pictures. Now, this video is probably more for those of you that are new to editing, or maybe you're new to Lightroom Classic, but I want to kind of show you an easier way to get started editing that will maybe take some of the guesswork out of it for you. Now, if you're an experienced Lightroom Classic user or you're an experienced editor, you may pick up something here or there from this video. But again, this is more geared towards the new people that are new to Lightroom Classic or new to editing, because really what I want to accomplish today is to kind of help you get started editing and make things a little bit easier for you. So you can see these are a lot of thumbnails of images that I took at Longwood Gardens last week. And let's go ahead and start with this one image right here, and I'm going to bring it into the Develop module. And the first thing you really want to do with your pictures in the Develop module, if I scroll down to Lens Corrections, you want to make sure that Enable Profile Correction and Remove Chromatic Aberrations is checked off. Now, if you watch my video from last week, as I show you how to import your images through the Lightroom Classic Import module, you can see, and you will see, how I set up the import so it does lens correction and chromatic aberration correction for every picture on the way in. So I don't have to do it now. I don't have to do it afterwards. But if you're working on an image, make sure that you go to lens correction and you have both of these checked off. Well, what does Enable Profile Correction do? It knows what lens you used, and it knows what the idiosyncrasies and the distortion are in those lenses, and it fixes it. So if you look at the picture, I'm going to uncheck Enable Profile Correction and just watch the picture. So here is unchecked. And checked. Unchecked. So it's got a little bit of pin cushioning in the center. And when I check off the Enable Profile Correction, it fixes that. If we go to the next picture, it doesn't have profile correction done to it. So watch what happens. When I click Enable Profile Correction, it fixes that. And of course, it fixes chromatic aberration. So while we have this picture in here, once you know that your lens correction and your chromatic aberration correction is fixed, here's what I recommend you do as a starting point. And it's also a good training tool. Scroll up to the basic module. Open up the basic module, and you will see that your profile typically, most likely, is Adobe Color. This is the standard color profile that Adobe uses when you import your pictures into Lightroom Classic. Now, there is a way to set this up. So instead of choosing Adobe Color, as you import your pictures, it will actually choose whatever your profile setting was in your camera. So for instance, I use camera neutral. When I do my photography, my profile settings in my camera, where the menu that has neutral and standard and landscape and monochrome and portrait and vivid, I have it set to neutral, camera neutral, because I want the camera to do as little to the JPEG as possible. And we talked about that a little bit last week, so I don't want to rehash that again today. But chances are your color profile is going to say Adobe Color. So how do you get started editing? Well, one of the easiest ways to do it is right up here is this auto button. So take a look at the picture. I'm going to click this auto button and you're going to watch this change. So 3, 2, 1, now. Okay, look at the change. Okay, now I can take the backsplash. I can take the I don't know if I can even say it now. The backslash key, not the backsplash key, but the backslash key, which is the key above your enter key on your keyboard. And if I click that backslash key, I will get a before. You can see up in the upper right-hand corner, right here, it says before. And I hit it again, after. So before, this is before I hit the auto button, and this is after I hit the auto button. Now, why is this a good training tool? Because if you look down here under tone, you'll see that by me clicking the auto button, it brought the exposure down a little bit, because obviously it was too bright on the water lilies. So it brought the exposure down. And what the auto button tries to do is it tries to bridge that gap between the brightest and darkest tones and tries to maybe even out that picture and make it a little bit more optimal for you. So it brought the exposure down. It brought the contrast up a little bit. It took the highlights, which are the brightest parts of the picture, and brought them down, and took the shadows and brought them up a little bit to try to balance things out. It found what we call the white point and the black point, but it doesn't touch these three. It doesn't touch texture, clarity, or dehaze, because those are more of a personal preference. They're different for every picture. And those three sliders all create a little bit of sharpness. So you got to be careful when you use those, okay? And if you ever do any sharpening to your picture, do it at the end. Because as you move texture, clarity, and dehaze, it could add a little bit of sharpness, and you may not have to do another sharpening later. But if you do a sharpening earlier in the game and then you move those three sliders, your picture may be over sharpened. So all we did right now, other than the lens correction, is we hit the auto button. Now, you can see what Adobe did when we hit the auto button, what it felt like it needed to do. But the good news is, you can now override any of these sliders. So if you think maybe some of these areas are still too bright, I can go to highlights and I can turn it down even more. See that? So I can override what the auto button did. Now this is slightly out of focus because the focus was on this one right here. As you can see, that's nice and sharp. Okay, so if I need to bring the shadows up a little bit more, I can. So I can open up the shadows a little bit more and bring my highlights down, and maybe I can bring the white point down a little bit. Okay, so let's take a look at before and after now. Before and after. Before and after. Let's go to the next picture. Okay, now I'm going to do something different. You can see Adobe Color is the color profile, which is probably what it says on in your develop module. But instead of the auto button, if I click in this box where it says Adobe Color, you see something called Adaptive Color, which is something relatively new, I think, within the last 6 months or so. So watch what happens when I hit Adaptive Color. Okay, a little bit darker than when I hit the auto button. So let me undo this. Let's go from Adaptive Color back to Adobe Color, and let's click the auto button. Okay, not quite as dark, but let me undo the auto button so I can go here where it says tone and double click on tone, and it sets all these back to 0. So let's go back to Adaptive Color for a minute. And it's just a little dark. So what I can do is I can change all of these. You can see none of these change because I didn't hit the auto button. I hit the Adaptive Color. Well, what happens if I do Adaptive Color and the auto button? Well, let's see. Got even darker. So I want to undo the auto button. So I'll double click on tone. And now I'm back to the Adaptive Color, which is still a little bit on the dark side, but I can now take these sliders. So if you look at this, these greens, the lily pads underneath got really, really dark. So I'm going to go to the shadow slider and I'm going to bring those up. Okay, so now I'm bringing up the shadow area in the picture and just move the slider around a little bit until you find it kind of pleasing. And maybe now I want to go to the exposure slider and maybe move that up just a little bit like this. So now let's go to before and after. Before and after. A really good starting point. Let's go to the next picture. Okay, and let's see what happens when we go to Adaptive Color again. Probably going to do the same thing, get kind of dark. Okay, so let me undo adaptive color and let's go back to Adobe Color and let's go to the auto button. Okay, not bad. Not bad. I mean, it's a really good starting point. So let's maybe zoom in here a little bit. And maybe I want to bring the highlights down a little bit more. So you can see I have a little bit more latitude here. So I'm just going to slide the highlights down a little bit more. And let's see what we got going on overall. Let's take a look at before and after. Before and after. I like that. Let's go back to our grid view and let's go to something that's maybe not as bright or not as blown out. Let's go over to this lily right here. And let's go to the develop module. Okay, now let's wait for this to load up here. You can see mine says camera neutral because I have Adobe set to use the color profile from my camera, which is something you can do. But let me go to Adobe Color, which is pretty much where yours is going to start off. And this isn't bad. This isn't a bad starting point. Nothing's really too dark and nothing's blown out. But let's go to the auto button and see what the auto button wants to do. Not bad. It brought the exposure up a little bit. It added some contrast. It brought the highlights or the bright parts of the picture down. It opened up the shadows a little bit more. It found what's called a white and a black point. And it touched vibrance, 11 points of vibrance, and it brought the saturation down just a little bit. Let's undo that. Let's double click on tone. And we just undid the auto button. And let's go to adaptive color and see what that does. Not bad. So I'm going to reset this again because I want to show you a little trick you can do. Now that I reset the picture, let's go back to lens correction and fix those. Okay. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to right click on this picture and I'm going to say create a virtual copy. So now you can see copy one. So let me go back to the original, number 2368, right here. And let's do the auto button on this one. And let's set this back to Adobe Color, which is probably where you're at. So again, I can undo the auto button, but I'm going to redo it. So here is the picture with the auto button. And let's go to the copy. Make sure we have that set for Adobe Color, which is chances are where you're at. And let's change this to adaptive color. So now this is adaptive color. This is the auto button. Now it's funny, you're going to see the shade, the shade of purple is going to change. Again, this is the auto button using Adobe Color, and this is adaptive color. So we have a little bit of change in the hue of the water lily. So which one do you like better? I guess it's more of a personal preference. Okay, let's go back to another one. Let's find something else up here. Let's try one of these yellows right here. We'll go to the develop module and I'm going to set this to Adobe Color. And let's see, let's make a virtual copy. So I'll right click, go down here to create virtual copy. All right, so here's my virtual copy, which is now Adobe Color as well. I'll go back to the original and let's try auto on this one. Okay, kind of worked more on the background than the actual flower. Let me redo this. Now I'm going to hit auto again. And auto is going to work a little bit more, try to brighten up some of this dark background. There's really nothing, there's some brightness down here. So you're going to see the highlights come down a little bit to take care of this. And you're going to see the shadows go up a little bit to bring up some more tone here. So here's the auto button. Okay, you can see what changed. Let's go over to the copy and let's just do adaptive color. Okay, a little bit brighter on the flower. So this is Adobe Color, adaptive color. So let's say you like adaptive color, but you want to tone it down a little bit. Well, go to the highlights or if you do exposure, you're going to turn down everything. But if you just start with highlights, you're just going to tone down the brighter parts of the picture. So watch the flower. So I can bring down some of the highlights on the flower. I can bring up maybe some more of the shadows in the background to try to balance that a little bit. And again, that / key right above your enter key will give you before and after. Before and after. Let's go to the picture before this. where we used the auto button. Before and after. Before and after. Now, instead of using these sliders, let's say I wanted to brighten the picture up a little bit. Instead of using these sliders, I like to click into the box and just use my up and down arrow keys on my keyboard. So you can see just a little bit at a time. I can just hit that key and look at my monitor and say, okay, I like this. And then maybe I want to click in the contrast and I want to add some contrast. I like that. And I can go into the dehaze, which isn't just for hazy skies. I can dehaze anything. Watch, I'm going to dehaze this. And I'm just going to hit the up arrow key. And you can see my dehaze right over here says 0, 1, 2. So I'm just going to keep hitting it until I like what I got. And then maybe I want to go over here to clarity and do the same thing. So now let's take a look at before and after. Before and after. Let's try one more. Let's find something. Oh, let's see. You can see I had a field day here. I mean, I just loved it. You know, now reds are very, believe it or not, reds are very difficult to edit because reds, they kind of bleed. This isn't as bad, but you're going to see sometimes there's reds that really kind of bleed into each other. So let's go ahead and make a virtual copy. All right, so let's go back to the original. Okay, I'm going to make it Adobe Color, which is probably what you're working with. Let's hit the auto button. Okay, and let's go back over to here to the copy, and we're going to go to Adobe Color as well, and we're going to go to Adaptive Color. So this is auto button, Adaptive Color. Now, if you like adaptive color better, you may like the reds better on this one than in the auto. So I can go back to adaptive color and I can click in exposure right here in the exposure box and just use my up arrow key and slowly bring this exposure up to right about something like that. And maybe I want to bring up a little bit of contrast. And maybe I want to go to the shadows and bring up some of the background. I can use the slider if I want, okay? By the way, you got a little thing here. Watch this. Your panel, you can make this wider or you can make it narrower. If you make it wider, then you have a little bit more room to slide, a little bit more gradual. Okay, so you just put your mouse over here till you see this double arrow. You're probably over here at the smallest. Why not drag it out? Give yourself a little bit more room to use these sliders. So let's see. Let's do one more. Let's go. Let's see what else we got here. Oh, I love these. Okay, so let's take this into the develop module. Let's go ahead and make a virtual copy. Okay, so we're going to go to Adobe Color on this one, and we're going to go to Adobe Color on the original. Okay, so we have Adobe Color. Let's go to the auto button. Okay, it really brought up the background. Let me double click on tone again. That undoes it. I'll hit the auto button. I like that. Now maybe I want to override the highlights and bring them down a little bit more. Right up here on this calla lily, get these highlights down a little bit more, and maybe bring my shadows up a little bit more. And I'll show you something else I can do. I can go in here to the texture slider, and I can move the texture slider up and bring out a little bit more texture. Let me bring this back to 0. And you can, once you move one of these, if you double click on it, it goes back to 0. So I can bring up the texture a little bit more if I want. So let's do a before and after. Before, after. Look how much texture and detail are in the leaves. Here's before, after. Okay, I like that. Maybe I want to add a little bit of clarity here. And I think I want to brighten it up a little bit. I'm just going to click in the exposure box, hit my up arrow key, and I'm okay with something like this. So let's take a look at before and after. Now let's go to the virtual copy. And let's, instead of Adobe Color, let's go to Adaptive Color. Okay, kind of bright, not much different than I think the auto button. So now I'm going to turn the highlights down like I did right there. Okay, and I can bring the shadows up a little bit. And you know what? If you're not sure what these sliders do, this is how you learn. Like for instance, texture. Move it all the way down to one side and then bring it all the way up. So this is all the way up, all the way down, in the middle, and just play with these sliders until you see what you like. So I kind of like that. And what does clarity do? Let's bring it all the way down. Okay, give it more of an eerie, soft feeling. Let's bring the the clarity slider all the way up. Whoa! And let's go back to 0. So you may want to smooth it down a little bit. You may want to bring it up a little bit. Give it a little bit of clarity. Okay, vibrance, same thing. Saturation kind of works more on the primary colors, and vibrance kind of works more on the non-primary earthy type colors. Well, let's take a look at before and after. Look at that. Okay, now one more thing I want to mention is that I have 2 slots left for the spectacular Sedona Landscape Masterclass. 2 slots left. And I'm still offering $650 off throughout this weekend. This is going to be an amazing workshop. It's all about landscapes and the gorgeous mountains of Sedona and about getting the right exposures, getting the right captures. This class is going to be you and me working side by side in the field every day. There's going to be some classroom style trainings. There's going to be some post-processing trainings. We're going to do some trainings on composition. Then we're going to be going to magnificent locations throughout the week and doing photography. And nobody leaves any of these locations until I look on your camera and I see that you got a money shot. So you're going to go home with some of the most incredible photography you've ever taken. I've got 2 slots left. Read all about it. Just go to my website, posneg.com. And when you get to posneg.com at the top, you can just click on events. And then when this loads up, just click on the Spectacular Sedona Landscape Masterclass. Read all about it. We're going to be going to the Holy Church of the Holy Cross. I mean, look at it's just amazing out there. Okay, you can read everything that we're doing. What's included? If you're on my flight, and so far everybody is, when you fly with me to Phoenix, I will drive you to the hotel. You don't have to worry about airport transfers, taxi cabs, or rental cars. Okay, I will take you from the airport to the hotel. You will ride with me the entire week, and then I take you back to the airport on Saturday. So round trip transfers from the airport is included. Transportation all during the workshop is included. A group welcome dinner on me, included. A group farewell dinner on me, included. Private one-on-one critique sessions. We're going to sit down, you and me, one-on-one in the afternoon and go through your images, maybe from that day or from the day before. And I'm going to help you get better for the next day. Private trainings out in the field, group trainings out in the field. Okay, and if you scroll all the way down, click here for pricing, deposit, payment, and schedule, and payment schedule. You can see right now until July 31st, which was yesterday, but I'm going to keep this going for the weekend, $650 off. So you're going from $37.49 down to $30.99. Okay, and you can split up your payments. So it's all right here for you to look at. Okay, so let's go back over here. And you can see what we did with these calla lilies. Here's the one with the auto button and some of the changes. And now the adaptive color. And maybe I just want to bring the exposure up a little bit. There, love it. And of course, if you want to crop it, here's the crop tool. Okay, so the auto button or adaptive color will get you started editing. Click on the crop tool. And you can just, if you want to bring this in a little bit tighter, but don't go too tight. Leave yourself some room in case you want to print this and you want to mat it. And then I can just double click right here. And there we go. And I can click and look at it 100%. Check out my sharpness. Okay. So anyway, I hope this video helps you kind of get started editing your pictures, either starting with the auto button or going to adaptive color. and then working the sliders from there. Now, here's something that you need to understand that I didn't understand right away. I kept thinking to myself, how can this be? Whatever you do in Lightroom to your pictures, it never touches the original that's on the hard drive. You can't screw up anything. Don't be afraid. You will never, whatever you do in Lightroom does not touch your original picture on the hard drive. So you can't mess anything up. Play around, make virtual copies, do different things with these pictures because you're never screwing up the original on the hard drive. That's why Lightroom Classic is known as non-destructive editing, which means it doesn't do anything to the original. You're only working on copies. All right? So thank you very much. And do me a favor, please leave a comment. I mean, my last weekly video last week, over 100 and some people watched it. I had one comment. I'm giving this to you for free. And it does take a lot of time to put these things together and then edit them and trim them and get it right and start over again because you messed up or whatever. It will take you 30 seconds to leave me a comment. So please do that. And I look forward to producing another free weekly wisdom video for you next week. Take care, guys.